My name is Harriet. I'm a doctor and I'm a mother of 2 young boys. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. So with my first, what happened was I found that I become really hungry. That's really how I found out that I was pregnant. I was there one day going about my business, and typically I'm not the kind who gets ravenously hungry, but I found myself being so incredibly hungry. I was like, something is not right. And both were planned and expected. So, and I was like, something, and my husband was like, well, don't you think that there's a possibility that that may be it? So that day I went out, bought a pregnancy kit, and found out that yes, I was pregnant. With the second one, I had nausea, like really strong nausea. Started in the morning, stayed on throughout the day. And I was like, I'm familiar with that nausea. I know what that is. So I wasn't surprised when I did test positive. So yes, that was how I found out in both situations. Oh, he was excited. Like I said, we wanted kids. We had planned to have kids, so was very excited when we found out that we were going to be parents. Both the first and the second time around. Yes, I think even the second time around, he more than me. My experience for the most part was, I would say in total, really good. The first time around, it was something new. I'd never been there. I was really excited to go through the changes and everything. The worst part of the first trimester was the nausea. I had intense nausea, and I'm talking all day nausea, not morning sickness. Morning sickness doesn't count. The only thing was I would throw up in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth. So like brushing my teeth became like a war in itself. But once I was past the initial throwing up and brushing my teeth, that was it. Nausea all day. Morning, afternoon, night, intense nausea. The other thing I had with my pregnancies was food aversions. So things that I could typically tolerate, suddenly I couldn't eat anymore. And I didn't like a lot of things. Most foods I could not touch. Most smells were just, I just couldn't deal with smells, especially any strong smell. But apart from those, for the most part, the journey was relatively smooth. Okay, so with my first, what happened was I was lying in bed. It was at night, we had gone in. It was about a week before I was due. Just lying in bed casually, and I had this app on my phone where I would read on all the things they expected, and there were lots of, there was like a chat for other mothers who were expecting around the same time, which was very helpful. And then all of a sudden I heard a pop, and I felt a gush. I was like, okay. Other people had described that as what it would be like. You would literally hear a pop, and which is what I did, a pop and a gush. I was like, okay, my water just broke. So I got up, rushed to the bathroom, cleaned up myself, and then got ready to go to the hospital. I got an epidural, so it was a smooth labor process. Not entirely smooth, there were a few hiccups here and there, but generally not so bad. The second time around, from the time labor begins to the time you deliver, in my case was literally less than an hour. And I suddenly felt the pain. And one of the things you have during pregnancy is what we call Braxton Hicks contractions. These are sort of practice contractions for the real thing. So you feel them. Sometimes you feel a little contraction, but you know it's not a real thing, right? But in this case, it was real and it was painful. And I'm like, Braxton Hicks generally are not painful, but these ones were painful. So I was like, okay, I think this is it. And the pain came on and didn't stop. Like literally seconds between contractions, I was in pain. I was on the floor. I was screaming, and I used to tell myself, I'm not gonna scream. Oh no, I know what to expect. Nope. All bets were off. I was screaming in pain. Woke my husband up. He was so confused. He didn't know what was going on because I was even having a hard time explaining to him what was happening. I was like, it's time to go to the hospital. It's time to go to the hospital. I was in so much pain. By the time we got to the hospital, I had almost fully dilated. By the time they put me down in the hallway, the nurses, the midwives came to check, I was pretty much fully dilated. And this was within an hour of the starting of the contractions. The baby came before the hour was over. That's how fast my labor went. it's a beautiful thing when you finally see this human being that has been cooking inside you for all these months. You know, you've always wondered before you have kids, what will my kids look like? I wonder what they will look like. You look at your partner, you're like, I wonder like whose features will they take, you know? And then suddenly this is the manifestation of that. You know, you are really looking at somebody who is a little piece of you and a little piece of your partner. It's really beautiful. So you look at this tiny little human being with tiny limbs and like probably like a cone head. So you're like, oh, it's like you say, it's love at first sight. It's not cliche. It really is love at first sight. Oh yeah. Not in a dramatic movie form, but yes, I mean, at times you talk to the baby, you rub your belly, you can feel your baby moving around. And one of the really cute things is you sometimes would, like I'll touch a portion of my belly or press down on it, and you can tell the baby can sense the movement and will come up to that point and then start kicking over there. And you're like, oh, this is so cute. Like there's a little human being inside me communicating. So first of all, you're used to just being independent, being able to get up and go wherever you want to go. Now suddenly you have this little human being who's entirely dependent on you, and you can't just get up and leave. You can't just get up and go to the store. You can't just get up and do what you were like, go and hang out with your friends. So there's a lot of restriction in that sense. You have to plan before you leave the house. You have to make sure that your baby is comfortable, is changed. Sometimes you're just about to leave, the baby has pooped, you need to change the diaper before you go. Your timelines, you're running on the baby's timelines, not your own. Everybody says this and it is true 100%. Sleep ceases to exist. Like you're a walking zombie, you're tired all the time because you're up at night feeding, you're up at night with a baby that's cranky, you're trying to, especially when they are going through like a growth spurt or having colic or something, they feed a lot or they cry a lot. So then you're up in the middle of the night, and during the day, yes, they'll tell you sleep when the baby sleeps, but truth is sometimes you have things to do. You can't sleep when the baby is sleeping. So it's, if you can, great. If you can't, you end up really, really tired. In my case, also, I breastfed my babies, and that was quite a transition. Breastfeeding, whew. Because, I mean, it looks effortless when you see other women doing it. Honestly, I used to be grossed out by breastfeeding. I used to like see kids breast and I'm like, ew, what is that? Like, why is this person hanging on somebody else's? Like, I just used to be so grossed out before I had my own kids. And I used to tell this to my husband. I didn't think it would come naturally. But interestingly enough, the baby came along, started breastfeeding, and the grossed out factor did not exist anymore. However, it was replaced with pain. Because once you start breastfeeding, there's somebody like sucking on your boobs all the time, you're going to get cracks. Even if you don't get cracks, the pressure on it is painful. And then there's also what we call involution of the uterus, which is when even though the baby's come out, your womb or your uterus has been growing in that process and in that period where the baby was developing. So now it's getting smaller, and one of the things that helps it is breastfeeding. Breastfeeding helps it to contract, to continue. So every time the baby latches on, you have contraction take place. So you're in pain up there and you're in pain down there. It's not a very pleasant experience. But once you establish a good breastfeeding routine and your baby's latching on properly, after a while it goes away. And the pain is replaced with just the joy of knowing that you're nourishing your child and your child is growing and your child is doing well. It was not easier the second time around. I didn't immediately have the baby and immediately have milk for the baby, which meant that it was a day or two before, actually with the first one it took about a week for the milk to come in properly. With the second it was a lot faster, but it wasn't immediate. One of them was just random pains. So for instance, I would get muscle cramps during my pregnancy, which was something I never had muscle cramps before. Suddenly in the middle of the night, you'd be turning around and then you have this intense muscle cramp, very, very painful in my leg. Things like that were not expected. It was helpful to stay hydrated. In terms of the actual labor and delivery, I'd say I learned that I was capable of enduring more pain than I ever thought I could. With the second, there was no time for an epidural or any form of pain medication. The pain was so intense. I was like, what is this? How do people do this? Somebody give me anything. Even when I knew that I'd passed the stage where I could get any pain medication, I was begging the doctor, like, anything, gas and air, anything, I'll take it. And they're like, no, sorry, you're gonna have to do this. But the minute they told me that, look, this is where we are, this is what we're doing, and I realized I was gonna have an unmedicated birth, I psyched myself, I took a deep breath, I calmed down, and I did it. And I was very, very, very impressed with myself that I was able to deal with that level of pain and do it as calmly as possible. Oh yes, yep. So for me, I didn't gain too much weight. I was very conscious of what I ate while I was pregnant. I made sure that my baby was well nourished. But at the end of the day, look, you've had a baby. Your body is going to change. It's not going to bounce back. You're not going to go back to being 100%. So I just had to tell myself that, look, I have created a human being. It's okay for my body to not be what it was. So when I stand in front of the mirror and I see the changes, my tummy is a lot flabbier than it used to be. I have like curves in the wrong places, the kind of curves you're not looking for. It can work a number on your psyche. You have to cut yourself some slack. You have to understand that, look, you've done an amazing thing of bringing a human being into this world, and your body has taken a blow, but it's okay because it's fine. There are times when your baby is inconsolable. There's nothing really you can do to calm them. You have to resort to whatever it takes to keep this baby calm. You have to dance, you have to sing, you have to make funny faces, funny voices, anything. There's times when I'm sitting there like cooing, like talking baby talk to my baby. There's a bunch of things you do. Sometimes you're dancing around, jumping. And you can tell, usually a baby will respond. They'll stop and stare at you like, wait, what's this crazy woman doing? My work situation was such that I could arrange to get a good length of time. So I had a lot of time to spend with my baby before I had to go back to work. With my second, however, I didn't get that luxury. So I actually went to work when my baby was still about 2 months old. And that meant I had to leave this tiny baby at home and then go to work, which was not easy. Honestly, it's not easy at all, especially if you are breastfeeding. That's one of the difficulties, because you have to make sure that you are providing enough breast milk for the baby to feed on while you're away. While you're away at work the whole time, the baby has to be able to feed. You have to be able to leave them with someone that you are comfortable with, someone who can care for them the way you would want your baby cared for when you're not around. It also meant that you had to be able to have the capacity to provide milk all the time. By that I mean, for instance, with me, I had to pump. So I got a breast pump, and at work I'll take time off and pump milk throughout the day. Because if I didn't pump, that means I would not have enough milk to provide for my baby. And the way breast milk works is, it's a demand and supply thing. So if you cut down your supply, the supply goes down. So if you go all day without breastfeeding, your breast milk supply will also diminish, and your baby will suffer for that.
What are some of the things?
Way too long, way too long, because you first of all need to make sure that you are prepared. No, well, that you are not the first person. After you had a baby, you become like person number 15 in whatever. But yes, you need to give yourself a good number of hours, because you have to, especially if your baby is still young and is breastfeeding, you have to make sure that you have enough breast milk. You have to make sure that the baby has enough clothes, so if they have any accidents, they can change. You have to make sure, if you have more than one kid, everybody's things are set. Food is set for everyone. Then you yourself are prepared and ready. You have to make sure that even your clothes, you can't wear the same clothes you wore all the time, because you have to wear something that's accessible, that makes breastfeeding accessible. I would say on average you need 2-3 hours to get ready for a 1 hour outing. The little one, when we first conceived, we started calling him Dumpling, because like there's a dumpling in the belly. So then I'd tell my older one, I'm like, oh, Dumpling, there's Dumpling. So I'd show him my belly and then Dumpling. Unfortunately, because he's so young, he came to associate Dumpling with the belly. So now sometimes he walks around, he sees the belly, he's like, Dumpling! I'm like, oops, no. Let's see, the most challenging for me, there's been a lot of challenges, really, a lot. But I think for me, the most difficult would be knowing that I'm doing it right. You know, sometimes you wonder, am I doing this right? Am I raising a kid who's going to be an asset to himself, to us, and to society? Or am I just raising a kid who's going to be a problem? That means, am I feeding them right? Am I clothing them right? Am I teaching them the right things? At which point do you start enforcing discipline? You know, these are things that, and as much as you can read about it, everybody's situation is different. It's a challenge, to be honest. None of us has all the answers. And that for me is my biggest challenge. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for my kid. I want to make sure I'm raising them right. Oh goodness, there's a million of them. And as much as there were a million challenges, there are a million amazing moments. You know, one of the best things is when your kid looks at you and smiles. You know, you see your kid is happy. Even my little baby, my 6-month-old, when he turns and sees your face, and then he has this, like, you just can't explain it, but this inner, the smile that comes from somewhere deep within, you can just see him brighten up. It fixes everything that is wrong with you in that moment, you know. And that, I think, is one of the most beautiful things. Seeing your kid happy. That really is one of the most rewarding. It's not just a reward for the kid because the kid is happy, it's a reward for you. It does amazing things for your mental, for your emotional, for every aspect of you.